And welcome once again to another episode of the Horizon Roundtable. Special treat for you guys this week. This is the second episode this week. Last episode, we talked about the team that got into the big dance, Green Bay. Went all about that. This episode is about everybody else. And so I'm Bob McDonald. I can be found on Twitter at Bob McDonald, and I am at campuspressbox.com. And as always, I am joined by Jimmy Lemke.
Hey, everybody. We're having a wonderful selection Sunday here in Milwaukee and Cleveland. Just checking everything out as we, are going to do. I'm sorry. You can find me at PantherU on Twitter. You can find our website, PantherU.com. We cover Milwaukee basketball. Covers Cleveland State. So you can come out.
Got a lot to get to.
Can you not hear me?
And yes, I did. Unfortunately, my 6-month-old puppy Harry made an appearance by being disruptive. So always good. Always good. Hey, you have a dog that's an ass. I have a dog that's an ass. So I'm
down in the corner, so he's not really, doing.
Yeah, well, all right. So today, let's talk about. Let's just kind of get the ball rolling with Valpo. Valpo, was clearly one of the first four out.
Yeah, they actually put him out right on the board there as one of the first four out on the selection show. It's heartbreaking because that they had quite the team this year. With a few of the seniors that they had, it was a real unfortunate because they really had a complete basketball team. You really wanted to see them get into the NCAA tournament. It doesn't happen. I think that anybody will have reasons why. I think the definite one is the Ball State loss from December, or was it late November, early December? It was kind of bothered me that they put so much stock in that Ball State loss. Number one, it was a road game. Number two, we are talking about we do mention from time to time, and you hear people say it, that the NCAA selection committee takes into account injuries and things like that. And Valpo was banged up.
And apparently, in the case of Syracuse, the 10-game suspension of Jim Boeheim. I think they actually took that into consideration.
I mean, it's a name. It's a name. It's a basketball.
Seriously, how in the hell does that happen? I mean, I know we can go on and on and on about, mid-majors getting screwed, but how the hell does Jim Boeheim and his non-compliant ass get bounced off of his own team for 10 games, and his handsome reward with his crappy schedule still get into the NCAA because you're Syracuse? Okay.
I mean, I thought they were still.
You know what? They're still pissed off from 2009 when Cedric Jackson hit him with a buzzer beater.
How did I know that was?
Hasn't been back there. Oh, because the way this whole thing went down, I relish it. Come on, guys. And you know what the best part is? They're probably going to get bounced out. They're going to probably lose by double digits in their opening round game. I think they will, and I'll eat my words if they don't. But
you seem to have had quite a bit of sugar this afternoon, Bob.
Who, me? Yes. Well, probably. Hey, I've been watching a lot of basketball, as many of my brethren at Campus Press Box have too. By the way, we're going to be all over the tournament. So
as I was saying, I think that the Ball State loss, the NCAA didn't take into account that David Scara had only played 3 minutes in that game because he was coming off injury, and I believe somebody else missed that game entirely. I believe it was one of the Walkers missed that game entirely.
I believe it was, yeah.
So, to be, is it really fair for Valpo to get kind of screwed like that? I mean, if they're going to take that into account, they should take that into account. and just let it be, you know? So I think that's what they really were looking at. You could also point to the fact that Valpo didn't have what the NCAA tournament looks at as quality wins.
Mhm.
Oregon was a close loss. Oregon State was a quality win, but those are the only two.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, because Oregon State got in, and they got in as a 7 seed, so that's. I think I think what it comes down, I think it comes down to, and the Ball State thing is one thing. Getting the other issue that I think might have played in is they get the double bye, they get the 1 seed, and they lose in the semis. I think if they win in the semis, then I think they're in. I think if they make it to the championship game, I think they're in the NCAA tournament. I really do.
There's definitely the question. Who knew that the top 2 seeds would just get bounced like that in the Horizon League tournament? It was probably had something to do with Valpo and Oakland not having the run. Not having they had too much time off.
Yeah.
It was quite the move. It looks like it was Tavon Walker. Tavon Walker didn't play in that Ball State game. And Tavon Walker is, for all intents and purposes, should have been an all-league player. It wasn't first or second team because there are only first and second teams. If there was a third team, Tavon Walker most certainly would have been on there.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't play in that game. So, I mean, I think it looks like it was Victor Nickerson that started in his place. And there's nothing wrong with saying that a team isn't good enough to play. But when a team loses on the road at 3, even against a really bad team, can you really – when one of your best players is not available and one of your best role players in Skara isn't available for most of the game, I don't think the NCAA selection committee took that into account. I think they saw it was a bad loss and then they marked it and forgot about it. And that's what I'm guessing it was. But there is something else with Valpo, and I did touch on it before, but I think it was lack of quality wins being not Valpo's fault, but rather the fault of scheduling as a good mid-major in 2015-16 season. Valpo they got Iona to come to the Arc, and they got to play Oregon and Oregon State on the road as part of a tournament. But overall, that schedule, it's not Valpo's coaching staff's fault. Whoever does the scheduling for Valpo, it's not their fault. It's the fault of the system. The system doesn't allow for good mid-majors who have aspirations of being in the NCAA tournament. It's very, very difficult for them to get the games. And if Valpo had more games, if Valpo had more games like Oregon and Oregon State, it stands to reason that they'd at least split those games. Yes. Say they had, more Oregon State level high major games and they went 500. Say they went 3-3 or even that's another quality win that they didn't have because teams wouldn't play them. I mean, I have access to Basketball Travelers, the board that the coaches post on. It used to be open to everybody, and then they locked it.
I think I remember that. I think I remember seeing that once upon a time because they post stuff like, your ex so and so is looking for games, and so.
And Valpo was on there looking for hard games. Valpo was like, we're looking for NCAA tournament level teams. We want to challenge our team this year. Anybody want to take it? And nobody took it. And
except for Oregon and Oregon State.
Well, yeah, and that was part of a tournament, and they stayed in their foxhole in Oregon. So, is it really Valpo's fault? You can only win the games that are in front of you, and the players, the teams that Valpo played, they walked away winning most of them. And the Ball State one is the one that everybody's going to go back to, and it's gonna suck. They whooped up on IPFW, and they crushed Iona, which is an NCAA tournament team. They beat them by wasn't it by 30 or 20? I think it was 20 or 25. They beat up on Iona. I mean, the game wasn't even close. Oregon was a close game.
It was, and
Oregon State. I had totally written them off. I wasn't even paying attention, and then somebody in the Valpo board is like, "Well, hey, look at Oregon State's resume." And I went back and I'm like, "Oh wait, this is a really quality basketball team. It's a quality team that they beat, and they beat them on the road. So you can only win the games that are in front of you. And for guys like Alec Peters and Vashil Fernandez, this just sucks, because they are definitely more talented than some of the teams that are in the NCAA tournament instead of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and again, the two that kind of the head scratchers, the one obviously Syracuse, the other one was Tulsa. I kind of don't get that one either. I mean, those are the two I really don't get, to tell you the truth.
I've seen Tulsa play a couple games, and I was very I was actually pretty impressed by them during the season. I mean, they definitely have that bubble resume, but I watched them play the game against SMU. A guy I work with is a SMU alum, and we were watching the Tulsa SMU game, and Tulsa was with them the entire time. SMU is a top 15 school, top 20 school this year, and they were the last undefeated team. And Tulsa won that. It was Tulsa, held their own, played that game tough.
And maybe that was probably the game that got them over the top, because that's it, that's what it is. But I mean, but regardless, I mean, you have a situation where, now we're at the end, and now we have Valpo, who's going to be the top seed in the NIT. Which, by the way, just looking at that bracket, they are playing Texas Southern, the Southwest Athletic Conference regular season champs. That one is probably going to be a walk, if you will.
Yeah.
That game, and then they will, if they win that game, then they'll likely face the winner of Davidson and Florida State. So that should be a decent matchup. Now, theoretically, in their bracket, or quadrant as the NIT is calling it, theoretically they could realistically have a third matchup with Belmont.
If they both make it all the way.
If they both make it all the way, theoretically, Valpo could play Belmont a third time.
Belmont has a very rough road ahead of them to get there. So that would be pretty incredible if you got a third game between those two schools.
That is true, because at the bottom of that quadrant, and St. Mary's is at 2 seeds. So, that's gonna be a tough road to hoe for Belmont. But at the same time, you got Valpo, who they're the top seed. They could be, if they have a good shot of making it to Madison Square Garden. So, I think that's gonna be I think for them, it's they'll take the lemons and make lemonade out of it, truthfully.
So there's no Richmond. Richmond not on the NIT. They were close, and they had said that they're not. They've just said on Twitter they're not going to be going to a tournament at all.
They are not.
Marquette is not going to be in the NIT. Turns out, now that Green Bay is in the tournament, that Marquette has the longest dry spell in the state of Wisconsin for teams to the NCAA tournament. So,
wow. For shame.
It's pretty great.
So, speaking of not going to any tournament at all, Jimmy, I'm just going to sit back and let you expound upon the fact that Milwaukee is in fact not going to anything at all. Jimmy?
I wanted to make sure that I didn't want to go like crazy. And I know that the audience that we're talking to is largely not the Milwaukee fans specifically. So you guys are coming from a different perspective than we are.
That's it. Before you get a little further, by the way, Jimmy, and by the way, if anybody Panther.com, this is Jimmy kind of really when it got into this whole thing this week. By the way, awesome Major League reference, by the way, as a Clevelander. I have to appreciate that.
Clevelander, in Milwaukee, we love everything Major League. I
would think so. I mean, Bob Uecker played a pivotal role in that game in that movie. So I mean,
Also, our pitcher Pete Vukovich played Clu Haywood, the big bad bat for the Yankees.
He was, yes, Clu.
So I mean, there was. Plus, they did the whole thing right here in. County Stadium was the stadium where they filmed. The Indians' home games.
That is, which I find interesting because which I find odd because Cleveland Stadium, come on, guys, old Municipal Stadium laying around, nothing better to do. So,
the funny thing is, like, Municipal Stadium is nothing like County Stadium in Milwaukee.
County
Stadium is like very open. It was really just the areas that had roof over it were really just the first and third baselines to home plate, and obviously municipal in Cleveland it's much more. It goes to like the middle of left center and right center, right? With the roof it was. Yeah. So
and of course a great feature of Municipal Stadium, obstructed view seating.
Yeah, we actually do have at Miller Park, the stadium that they built here in 2001. Excuse me. In Miller Park, they have obstructed view seating behind home plate all the way up on top. They call them the Euchre seats, and you can't buy them before online or anything. You have to come up to the gate, and they're $1 a piece.
Anyway, we got a little too far afield. I'm sorry. I had to make the Major League reference. Had to express my appreciation for it. Proceed, Jimmy.
Right. So, I wanted to come at this from a different angle because I know that we'll have Oakland fans that'll be listening. We'll have Valpo fans that'll be listening. Cleveland fans, and what I want to say is that we've only been to the CBI once. So for some of the schools that have been to these postseason tournaments, Oakland's been to the CIT, I think, like 3 or 4 times. Don't quote me on that. I'm trying to guess. I think it was about 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
So when you got Greg Campy out there making the comment that they're done with kind of like these cutesy tournaments, it's time to get a better one. And then they're open to the Vegas 16. It definitely sounds like the Vegas 16 is situating itself as that third tournament, and then forcing the CBI and CIT into, like a 4th tier rung. But what I would say is that number one, we haven't played those, and number 2, Oakland did use those. And Campy will say this absolutely, as at the time, Oakland used those tournaments to build this program and get better. I don't know. You can't really say like how much each of those tournaments really affects the team because everything's different from year to year. But I know that there's nothing wrong with more basketball, especially when donors for the university are willing to foot the bill, and you don't have to deal with having that cost. If the donors are willing to pay for you to play, it doesn't matter how much Loyola spent in the NCAA tournament last year, or the CBI last year.
I found that to be kind of when I read that because I read the journal, the Milwaukee papers take on that.
Gary D'Amato interviewed Amanda Braun, and she had mentioned that Loyola had spent something like $250,000 last year hosting the CBI, and they ended up winning it. And what she fails to mention is that they paid to host every one of those games. So it was, you to get into the CBI, you have to pay enough. You have to pay to be able to host at least one. 2011, we didn't have to, or excuse me, 2012, we didn't have to pay to get into the CBI because we agreed to be a part of the same group. I can't remember the promoter of the CBI.
It is the Gazelle Group. Gazelle Group is the
people that do is it the preseason NIT that they do? They do early in season tournaments, and we agreed to be a part of that. And by doing that and eschewing a home game as part of that tournament, the Panthers got to play in the CBI without having to incur costs on that. I believe they had to cover travel costs there in that year. And this year, our donors are willing to pay for it all. Now, I understand where some people are coming from. I understand where Amanda Braun, the RAD, is coming from when she says that, these aren't the goal of the program is not to be in the CBI. I completely agree that. The goal of the program, she wants to be top 3 in the conference and top 100 in the country. Those are attainable goals for a team that has been averaging between 4 and 5 the last 10 years. That seems to be an achievable goal, whether that's for Rob Jeter next year or another coach after him. Those are achievable goals. But I will say this is that when the tournaments come to you and say, we'd like you to participate, and the players want to be in it, and the coaches want to be in it, and the donors are willing to spend money on it, and the fans want to be a part of it. It's hard to say, well, we didn't reach our goal, so therefore we're not going to be a part of this. Our goal is to get into the NCAA tournament. That doesn't mean that if we get into the NIT, we're not going to take them up on that offer. We're going to go and we're going to play, and we should look at it as an opportunity to make our guys better. It's just a difficult thing to take when you watch this team and this group of guys go through what they did.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the other part of this here, because the question that I have is, if this group is eligible to play in a postseason last year and they do end up in things kind of change, does that kind of change the dynamic of turning down a postseason this year is my question. Because you see that you see that in varying, it's always on a case-by-case basis. I mean, last year, I'm looking at it right now. I mean, Kent State is opting not to be a part of the postseason. Kent State, similar mid-major, not the only one, obviously. Sure. So it just comes down. I mean, even some of the. So I guess the question is, does from a standpoint of being able to kind of having this group, in recognition of, sticking it out for a year where they wasn't going to be able to do anything at all, where they weren't able to do anything at all.
That's where this comes from. Every program has to answer the question for themselves. Is this something that are these postseason tournaments really something that we want to be a part of this year? Every program's different. You named Kent State earlier. We named Richmond. It sounds like Marquette may play in the Vegas 16 if they don't. Every program has to answer for themselves, because no two programs are the same. Everybody comes from different points of view, and from my point of view, I see a group of kids and guys like seniors like Matt Tybee, JJ Pinoski, and J.R. Lyle. 3 guys who were part of this program. Lyle joined in 13-14 in the tournament year. Pinoski and Tybee had been here in 12-13. Tybee came in semester and sat out the second semester of 2013 season.
Sure.
JJ Panoski had been a freshman eligibility-wise that year, so he was playing. Those three guys have given years to the program. And the players that were responsible for the APR ban of 2014-15, the 2015 tournament that we were banned from, the players that were the players that had been part of that ban were no longer with the program going into the 2013-14 season. So
yes,
we're talking about guys that did not play for even the 2014 tournament team. So when we got to the 2014-15 year and we were going through, there were several players who could have transferred out without missing a year of eligibility. Austin Arians could have transferred out. Steve McWhorter could have transferred out. Evan Richard could have transferred out.
yes.
These guys all stuck through it. I mean, Steve McWhorter, who had led this team to its first NCAA tournament as the point guard, he was the point guard for the first NCAA tournament team in 8 years. He forewent going somewhere else, in which he could have started at point guard for any number of tournament level teams or post
absolutely
teams. He stuck around and stuck through it, and the character of the guy to be willing to do that is incredible. And he was far from the only one. I mentioned Arians. We mentioned Arians redshirted in 2014-15 to maintain his for this year and next year. He could have gone somewhere. There was a very high level school that is very close to us, and very close, I mean, like, I won't say which, but they are an upper Midwestern high major. They are an NCAA team this year, and they flat recruited Austin as soon as the APR ban hit without trying coaches. And Austin told them basically to screw off. He was so committed to his teammates and coaches that he was willing to stick it out to see it through to now. These players have now, in the fall of 2015, broke the record for team GPA that they set in spring of 2015. After spring of 2015, they broke the team GPA record of fall 2014. So 3 straight semesters, this men's basketball program has broken the academic record, the team GPA of the program. Guys from the Pearl era and the Bo Ryan era, and there was a guy from like the 80s that they all came back to graduate because it would help the APR, even though they weren't hurting the APR. They were out of the APR, the mix after that. Guys came back and graduated, and it was really cool to see guys that had been classmates of mine who had gone back. Like, one guy went back home when he was going to graduate. He went back home to take care of a sick mother, because it was just him and his mom. His mom got cancer. She ended up getting better, but he was out there when he should have been finishing up his studies. And by should, I mean like by the NCAA standards. But I think it takes a lot of character for somebody to put off their future to go take care of a sick mother. And that guy counted against the APR for their 2012-13, the 5-year period leading up to 2012-13. So it was, out of there. It didn't, he counted against us for the 14-15 APR score. There was a guy who was playing professional sports, and because somebody in the university did not file the correct paperwork, because he was not a pro basketball player, but a professional player in another sport. He didn't, and I will not say who that is, but he did not. He counted against the team for the AP score. So, but he's come back and he's going to graduate sometime this summer. He's graduating. I don't know in August if he'll walk or not, but he's graduating. The program, and those are all guys from the past. The guys from now, I've talked to several players. One of them we watched the Horizon League Championship game today on ESPNU, the women's tournament semifinal.
Mm-hmm.
Not a fun game to watch, so we ended up talking about the events of the past few days.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about how this Amanda Braun has brought up that we have these goals of being top 3, top 100. We these are not the CBI, CIT. They're not worthy of us spending our resources on. She had sent that in an email to parents, and then the parents forwarded that to me, and that's on PantherU.com if you want to read her email to parents.
Yeah.
She mentions multiple times that finances are part of it. Finances were not part of it because the donors were willing to pay for the entire thing. I was mentioning these goals that she had set, and there's nothing wrong with having goals, but I talked to these players today that I talked to while we were watching this women's basketball game. I was like, this is when she sent that email and I got to see it. That was the first time I had ever heard of a specific top 3 finish in the Horizon League, top 100 overall. That's the first time I've heard of anything like that, as far as like a goal for getting into the postseason. And they said that there wasn't any goal as far as that's concerned. It was, let's try and get the team had set themselves, the coaches and players themselves had said, let's try and be in the top 2 so they could get the double bye. That was what their goal was. But Amanda Braun she had said no goal. There was no goal there's no goal to be set there. So how can you tell these kids who basically ate a quarter of their eligibility as basketball players last year, except for Austin, who redshirted and could have gone elsewhere. All these kids who could have gone elsewhere to play in the postseason. I understand that the CBI and CIT is not where anybody wants to be. We all want to be in the NCAA tournament, and failing that, we want to be in the NIT. And I understand. I understand that we all feel that way. I feel that way. Would I rather be in the NIT than the CBI or CIT? Of course. But these kids gave a lot they gave a quarter of their college career, and we didn't lose any transfers off of the 13 team or the 14-15 team. It wasn't until after the Notre Dame game this season when Justin Jordan, Michael Jordan's nephew, decided he was going to leave the team, and then Jaquan McLeod in was it late January or in February, he decided he was going to leave. Those hit blindsided everybody. They did that for their own reasons. It sounded from the guys that I've talked to, and these are guys who are very close with Jaquan. They had said that it had to do with playing time. So that's definitely, it was all playing time. There wasn't anything personal with any of the players or coaches or anybody like that. It was a playing time thing. So, but these guys that are here now, McLeod's not here. Jordan's not here. These guys that are on this roster right now at the end of the 2015-16 season, all of these guys stuck through it with the program. They stuck with Milwaukee when there was no postseason for them to play last year. And they had nothing to do with it. And they want to keep playing. And the donors want them to keep playing. We've got a few donors that just love Matt Tybee. And they love JJ Panoski and June, the JR Lyle. They love those guys. And they will and they're willing to pay, 5 figures to make sure that those guys can end on their own terms. Tybee had, the Green Bay game on Sunday last week, Tybee had an incredibly bad shooting performance. JJ Panoski fouled out with a few minutes left. JR Lyle got hurt. I mean, he got hurt in that game. He whacked one of the Green Bay players, and they ran into each other. He whacked his arm. It was so these guys gave a lot to play for this school. You have to. I understand if Amanda Braun wants to make a point, but this wasn't the team to make the point with, is what I'm saying. This isn't the team to make a point with. If you want to make a point to Rob Jeter, I don't know why, because she wants to get rid of him anyways, and that's not gonna change if Rob Jeter goes to a Final Four next year. And it's not gonna change for Rob and his coaching staff. And what do you say to guys like Tybee, who did everything you asked them to do? They didn't win the number of games that you needed them to win. They won 20 games, and the NCAA tournament team from 2 years before won 21 games. So, are they really that? Are they really so far back that they don't? Do they just not deserve to keep playing at all? That's what just really bothers me. And we already know that it's hurting us recruiting.
Here's my question. This is something else entirely. You bring up something, and now Rob Jeter's his contract is up at the end of next year, correct?
June 1st, 2017, I believe, is the date that is.
Okay, so his contract is up at the end of next year, and from what it sounds like kind of all signs point to him not getting his contract renewed. Sounds like.
Yeah, I would.
I mean,
there's kind of.
But it seems to me that this is more of a, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to me that this is more of an underlying kind of internal battle between Jeter and Braun that's got collateral damage, basically. And the collateral damage is the seniors.
A question I have is what axe does Jeter have to grind? Where is the fight? What is Jeter defending? Is he defending his job? Because he knows that it's almost probably over next year. He knows that. The coaching staff knows it. The players know it. Everybody knows this is probably to
that end. And this is my other question though: with these actions, that isn't the AD kind of telegraphing, negatively affecting the program even after 2017 if they do this? I mean, that's kind of should be the concern, that this action does not only speaks to, I mean, it doesn't, may not, what I think about this is irrelevant, but if this is indicative of a further internal battle that is going to affect not only next year, but subsequent years, because it's going to affect recruiting, it's going to affect everything else, then that's kind of that's kind of a real issue.
Every opposing coach who recruits against us is going to use her against us in negative recruiting until she's gone. This is an athletic director who looked point blank in the face of people who gave up a year of their college career.
You guys Milwaukee kind of goes through ADs like the drummers and Spinal Tap, so odds might be pretty good actually.
The funny thing is that this May will be 3 full years with Amanda Braun, so it's actually she has brought stability to the job. And when I say stability, I don't mean stability in like the actual job itself. I mean that she sat in the chair for 3 years.
Okay.
So when we
you want a cookie? I mean, that's.
Well, no, it wasn't. It's not that.
Just because you've been at a spot for 3 years doesn't mean you're necessarily any good at your job. I mean,
she could have pulled the plug on Kyle Recklitz after last season and Kyle's 3rd year as the women's basketball coach, and they finished 2nd in the conference this year.
And she was named coach of the year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and she also, Amanda also took us back from the on-campus arena back downtown, and then, taking some idiot's recommendation, goes and convinces the university to buy the naming rights to the arena. So now, we've bought the naming rights. So Amanda's done those things.
Okay.
Upgrades to the arena have been done by the Wisconsin Center District. She didn't have anything to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that corporate sponsorships we've lost some of our biggest corporate sponsors. And I've heard from the mouth of the corporate sponsors themselves that she is the biggest reason why we lost. I can't. I don't want to name the sponsors themselves, but we've lost some.
Yeah,
sponsors.
you don't need to.
And
if they want to advertise with us, yeah, hey, we're over here.
She's lost donors, and first you get Akeem Springs talking on Twitter, then you get a couple players, then you hear from me. I will say this: it's not over.
Probably not.
And Rob Jeter is not talking. I've tried talking to all the coaches, and they're like, and not from a media standpoint, just from being friends for as long as we've been around each other, and they're like, we're staying completely out of it. Like they want nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're I mean, Jeter I never even got a response from. So
sure.
These guys are staying out of it, and from what I hear, it's not over as far as the side of the players. Players themselves, not the coaches, because the coaches, like I say, they're laying completely low. They're just doing their job. They're doing their job. Problems off recruiting right now, I believe. He's at a funeral like today or tomorrow that he was going to be at, and he was out recruiting at the same time. But they're staying out of it. All we hear from Amanda Braun is, we hear that, well, it was financial things. Well, it's not a financial thing. Well, it's a goal thing. Well, you didn't share these goals with the team, so how are they supposed to know that you're not going to let them go to the CBI or CIT just because? And these today in this article today, she's like, well, there was no formal offer from a formal invite from either of these teams. Well, of course, there wasn't a formal invite. You're not going to get a formal invite until you tell them that you're coming. Obviously, there's not a formal invitation coming until you're already saying you're going to go. So what are you trying to spin here? Everything with Amanda Braun is spin. And she's an extremely intelligent person, and in every time I've spoken with her, she's been very cordial. You get fans and donors and sponsors that will tell me that she's cold, and I've never gotten that. I've always been able to speak with her on a personal level. She seemed, we've gotten along in person. I haven't caught the cold vibe that some people have, but I did catch the cold vibe once at a basketball game, but that was mostly because I was being a jackass. It was nothing to do with anything else.
I
was being sarcastic when we were losing to UIC last season at home. And she was like, "Hey, be a fan." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, thanks. Like, you need to tell me to be a fan." Like, okay, whatever, that's fine. I don't agree with how she did it, and I don't agree with the decision itself. So at the end of the day, and just to wrap up the Milwaukee thing, these players feel like they were robbed. These players feel like they were lied to by their athletic director, who said that she supported them. These players feel this way, and they have spoken out because they're angry. She also tried claiming in this article today that not all of the players were interested. I've spoken with just about every player, and every single one of them wants to play. Every single one of them wants to play. So I don't know where she's coming with this, but it sounds to me like she's using spin. Sounds to me like she said, no players say anything to any media. I'm going to go and put words in your mouth. That's what it sounds like to me. So I'm just at this point, I think it's time for Milwaukee to get on the carousel again. A lot of our fans don't want Jeter to be around anymore. I get that. I understand that. We've had his tenure has been, from a record standpoint and amount of postseason standpoint, it would be a little bit better than average, which to these fans is not acceptable anymore. Bruce Pearl blew the ceiling wide open as far as expectations with these fans.
Oh, yeah.
So, anybody who was going to follow him was going to have a tough time, and Rob's going on 12 years here. So it's tough for Rob. And I'm fine. Rob's probably going to be leaving at the end of next year. So I'm at the point where I want this program to get itself set for that decision. And I don't trust this coach to make that decision because she'll turn down the postseason, as well as the other things that I outlined in the blog post from Friday, as well as a whole bunch of other things that I didn't even mention in that piece.
Here's my other question to you, and I want to get a little bit to some of the other schools as well here really quick. My other question, and this is something we probably have alluded to in previous episodes. Say that Rob Jeter does in fact, leave at the end of 2017. Amanda Braun is still the AD. Do you trust your AD to make the right decision as it relates to a replacement head coach? That is the question.
I want the Chancellor Mark Money to make that decision. He is not. He's hasn't shown that he is what we would call an athletics chancellor. He is most chancellors. He comes from complete academia. So I know that he wants to be supportive of the program, and next year for us to, for everybody to show him how to be, that supportive chancellor for athletics, because he wants to do it. So let's get him to do that, because I want him making that decision. And to be frank, I've defended Amanda Braun with the people that have been complaining about her for years. Partly because I've looked at our revolving door in that chair and thought that eventually people are going to say, well, it's not the person, it's the program. And to an extent that's true. But that culture around that program, with all of the people that had institutional memory that have been run off, and all the things that she's doing in men's basketball now, I don't think that the culture is going to get better with her as athletic director. And we know it's going to hurt recruiting. We know it's going to hurt recruiting, and we know it's just going to hurt the program. These players, the one thing I will say about this is that these players are reacting the same way that Tom Berenger and every one of those guys on the Cleveland Indians did in a movie.
They did.
They're pissed off, and they're going to go try and win absolutely everything to take it out of her hands next season. They don't want her hands to decide whether or not they go to the postseason next year. They want nothing to do with her, and I don't blame them. And I think that at this point, as a fan of the program for 12 years, with everything that I've seen her do, everything that I've seen, every decision I've seen her make, she's probably made 2 or 3 decisions that I thought have been really good decisions. I thought they were pretty obvious decisions. 1 or 2 of them were my ideas to begin with. So, I'm glad to have an athletic director that would listen to what I was saying, not being a donor, but being, a fan. Happy to have that, but I think we need to move on. I think we need to move on, just like we need to move on with this podcast.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. I'm glad we got to that point. I wanted to talk a little bit about. I definitely wanted to talk a little bit about Oakland. It looks like whereas Milwaukee is obviously not is not going to be going to a postseason. Looks like Oakland is looking at definitely going to a postseason, and from what it sounds like from their AD, their big focus is going to be on Vegas, that Vegas 16 tournament. I have not, and we're recording on Sunday, so I have not seen anything related to that that particular tournament as yet. But that seems to be kind of the direction they want to go. And I think the other thing, and it makes sense. If I'm Oakland and I've got Kay Felder on my roster, who, by the way, was named the third team Sporting News All-American, I might add, you want to keep playing. And you have you have the group that definitely wants to, definitely they still have those competitive juices flowing. They finished second in the Horizon League. They want to, they want to get at it.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be, and like I said, unfortunately, as of the recording of this podcast, we do not know exactly which postseason tournament they're heading to, but it's a pretty safe bet that they're going to be in one, and that's going to be, they're going to be chomping at the bit to take all comers.
Campy's on Twitter. He's been on Twitter lobbying the last couple of days to jump the NCAA tournament from 68 to 96. What do you think about that?
You know what? And realistically, we're at the point where we have 350 some odd teams in Division I in the NCAA now. When the NCAA expanded the tournament from 32 to 64 and then subsequently to 68, there were considerably less. You've grown Division I by leaps and bounds. And at some point in time, you need to get to a point where your signature tournament reflects that. You have to get to that point. College football has done this, because college football has added bowl games like crazy for years. Yes. Why is it that bowl, even with the college football playoff, they've expanded bowl games like crazy to the point where they're inviting teams with losing records based on their APR, which, by the way, I thought that was the funniest thing on the planet and the most ironic thing on the planet. Why is it that you have football? I think I already know the answer to this, but why is it that you have football that where you add bowl games left and right, even in the face of the overarching, college football playoff? How is that expanding? And yet on the basketball end, which, by the way, come tournament time, moneymaker for the NCAA. I think we all know that. I mean, it's universally accepted. I mean, the networks know this. They, pretty much pour in all their money on the tournament side. How is it that tournament has not expanded at all? I mean, it expanded to 68. Well, whoop-de-doo. Why have you not? I would make the argument for 96. I would not. Probably that would be the upper limit for me, just because. But I would make the argument for 96.
I don't know if I would go as far as Bobby Knight. Bobby Knight made the argument that we should go to 128.
I would not. Well, we could go complete. Honestly, we could go completely off the rails here. We could go full Ohio. We could go high school tournament on everyone. Okay, everybody gets in. Go to the sectionals and the regionals.
You're still talking about barely a third of the teams.
You are.
If the NIT didn't exist, would 128 really be that bad? Because you're talking going for 96. You're talking about going to 96 and adding the 32, and you're almost at that. You are at that number anyways. So what's the problem of just eliminating the NIT and making it all the NCAA tournament? The argument that I would make, and why at this point I I wouldn't lean this way because I personally do think that 96 is a good number. But
For the amount of teams that are in Division One now, I think 96 is a good number.
I think 96 is a pretty good number, and the what I'm saying to support the people who want to keep it at 68 or around that number, what I will say is this: 68 game, 68.
This seems like this is an argument we could have made last episode, but whatever.
People look at the NCAA tournament as being these 68 teams, and I personally look at the NCAA tournament as beginning with your first game in the conference tournament. I feel like when we lost to Green Bay on Sunday, that we were eliminated from the NCAA tournament. And that's how it goes with a lot of high school stuff. You play your conference, and that gets you into regionals and then sectionals or whatever, however they list it. I feel like to me, these teams
works a little different in Ohio, but
it's obviously a little different in every state. But the point I'm trying to make is that when Cleveland State was technically in the NCAA tournament because they had to lose to Green Bay in the Horizon League tournament before there was no hope for them anymore. If Cleveland State had beaten Green Bay, then beaten Milwaukee, then beaten Valpo, then beaten Wright State, then Cleveland State would have been in the NCAA tournament, and we would have been talking about it. So none of those teams, the only team that was eliminated out of the Horizon League was Northern Kentucky because they're ineligible as in their last year of being a provisional team. But the other 9 schools, you're in the NCAA. I always look at it as like we were eliminated from the NCAA tournament by Green Bay in the quarterfinals of the Horizon League tournament. And I that's why I think that 68 isn't a bad number because all of these teams that are part of the 68 had to win enough or had to win their tournament to get there. And if you count their tournament as being a pod in the NCAA tournament rather than just being a conference tournament, it makes a little more sense.
All right. All right. I think at this point in time we'll wrap it up again. We'll probably talk a little bit more about. We'll definitely talk more about Valpo and Oakland and probably and Wright State next week, depending on how they've done to this point. I think we'll still be talking about Valpo for a couple more weeks just based on their schedule. So. But yeah, we're still doing the Horizon. We're doing more episodes, and so we're riding it till the wheels fall off, Jimmy.
We're gonna keep on doing it all the way through the end of the Horizon League season. Thanks everybody for your support with all this, with the Horizon Roundtable. We're really happy to get people to say it. Shout out to Greg Campy because I had a few people. DM me on Twitter saying that he was name dropping the Horizon Roundtable when he was at the Horizon League tournament last week. So,
which episode though?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, obviously, Greg Campy's awesome. Is basically what a.
I can see Greg Campy. I can see Greg Campy probably going up to one of the Horizon League people. It's like, hey, did you know there's a letter out there? There's an email out there from John LaCrone.
An email out there from John LaCrone, huh?
To me, from like 2001.
Yeah, you mentioned it.
Oh God! All right. With that, we'll catch you next week. We're at fourlights.fm and go visit the site. They got completely redesigned. It looks great, I think. And subscribe to us where good podcasts are found.
Thanks, everybody.